Hello and welcome back to Sports Taza. Today I have Vidit with me. Welcome Vidit to the show. As we look towards the Ashes and how has it gone for England so far, Vidit, England has had a thumping in the first two games, and it looks like that Australia has already got one hand in the series. What are your thoughts about the first two games and the problems that England have faced?
So the problems that England have faced are pretty much evident in the changes they've made for the third test. Four changes when you don't have any injury concerns as such is somewhat pressing the panic button. And it is a panic situation. This match, the Ashes is gone. And it's not that there's been any strong England moments in the first two tests. In the second test on the last day, there were some hopes with Butler batting, with Wokes batting, but that was just hope. It was not the match going close. There was just some hope for a draw, not for England's win. Not even in one session till now, I have felt that England can actually bounce back. And they've made four changes. And if you see the changes, your question of can England bounce back rests a lot on them. They've removed two batters and two bowlers. The two batters being removed, number one being Rory Burns, who's not even scored 50 runs in four innings. Then Ollie Pope. His struggle outside England continues, be it in Asia conditions, be it in other Australian, New Zealand conditions. So even he scored less than 50 runs. So they've gotten Bairstow in the middle order to plug that gap, and Zach Crawley up opening along with your Hasib Hamid. Hamid also not had a great two tests, but at least better than Burns. And Burns also dropped some crucial catches. He dropped a crucial catch of Warner in slips, and Warner scored 90 odd runs. I'm a bit surprised by the bowling changes. So I still feel that England has lost the first two tests because of the bowlers, not because of the batters. And their bowling has disappointed. It's a very mix. Batters also scoring 150 odd runs, and once you have a huge first innings lead given to Australia, there's no coming back. So definitely England can bounce back, but a lot has to depend now how Root performs. England revolves around him, so let's see how that goes.
Certainly, I think with Joe Root, no one can question his ability to bat. I think he's shown in both the games that I mean he's the one who's scoring bulk of the runs for England. But
Yeah.
a lot of concerns that I've come across in the first two games have been on the selection of the team, on the choice of players they have picked up. Certainly, we saw in the last game Adelaide, England went with five pacers, right arm fast pacers. They missed out on a spinner. They dropped him out while Australia went with Nathan Lyon. We saw that it was one of those. It was 40 degrees out in Adelaide. It was a rougher pitch, and so a lot of concerns have been. We saw Rory Burns after the first test. People are concerned about him still playing. They got him another chance in the second game, and he was no good. So a lot have been said on the captaincy bit, maybe the management and how England decided to rest Broad and Anderson in the first game of the Ashes series. I mean, that's the most important game. You win that game, you get a good start. So a lot has been questioned on the captaincy team selection. What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think that England with these fortunes, like you mentioned, they've come back, try to change a few things around. But do you think, especially in that opening slot, because we've seen Australia dominate that part where David Warner has just been continuously making runs for them, and once you get that start, once you're a 150 for a one or a two, then it's much easier. Where England always find themselves Root coming out for a 10 for two, with the openers not doing well. So, what are your thoughts about just the planning for the game in itself?
No, very rightly said. I've probably felt that Anderson, Broad, at least one of them will play all the five tests. Both are growing old. You cannot expect them to play a long Ashes, all five matches. But not having a single one of them. And if you see, both combined have about 1150 test wickets, which is a huge number. Both of them not being a part of the first test was a shocker, definitely. Then both of them were brought back in the second test, but England didn't go ahead with the spinner. And you saw the turn that Root was getting, that Nathan Lyon was getting. And if Root is getting so much turn, you want Jack Leach in the squad. And they've got him back for the MCG for the Boxing Day. So I'm again surprised Broad has been dropped again after just a one-off test. So team selection certainly a bit of a concern for them. But when things are not going your way, you doubt your what's happening, your team selection. Rory Burns personally, I would have played him the second test again. One test is too soon to drop him, but now in the third test, not like Zach Crawley is performing or is in some great form. If you see, you mentioned about Australia opening slot. I feel it's just David Warner. If you see Marcus Harris, he's just scored 38 runs in four innings. His place in the spot or in the squad is only confirmed because Australia is 2-0 up. Had it been the opposite, if it was Australia losing the two games, then Harris would have been the same fate what
No,
happened to Rory
certainly,
Burns.
certainly what you said, I think it makes sense. But just that one of the openers at least is getting those runs out. Like you don't
Correct.
want your number three and number four, the most important batsmen, coming down at 10 for 2 and soaking in the pressure. I mean, certainly Malan and Root have done that for England. But game after game, if that happens, and once either of them, we saw that England are in a commanding position with both batting at 150 for 2, and you
Yeah.
suddenly lose one of those two, then the game just goes out. I mean, you don't have anyone solid enough to kind of continue that run, and that's been the issue for England. I think so. One of the openers need to probably get the runs for England. Hasib Hamid has played. He played the Indian series. He's got some runs there. Has played two games now. So probably it's going to be him. I mean, Jack Crowley is coming back into the test, one-off game again for him. So it has to be Hamid, where you see at least a 50 or something, one of those runs that comes from his bat, so that the top order provides for England.
No, no, absolutely. It's very much due from Hamid as well. These four low innings will not help him. He needs to score something and provide a minimum 100-run partnership, be it 100 for one, 100 for no loss. England badly needs that. And as you rightly said, once you get the wicket of Malan and Root, the floodgates just open. Butler just prevented that probably on the last day, but that was again a one off instance. He might have played 200 odd balls. And if you see, Vokes has been the fourth highest scorer. He may not have been performing with the ball, but he's performing with the bat at least. And then you've dropped him as well. There's a lot of take on him not performing outside England, which is true. He doesn't get a lot of seam which he gets in England. But and Ollie Robinson is more consistent, bowls a consistent fourth, fifth middle stump line. And they've got a spinner back. They've got Mark Wood. I still feel if Broad not injured, he should have played the third test. But probably it's again, you might see Anderson resting one of the tests ahead, Broad playing in his place. So a lot of changes made on England, a lot of changes made on Australia side as well.
Yeah, coming to that, I think Australia is having a ball. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
not with the bat. It's not the batsman scoring runs. You're getting 50s, everyone scoring and everyone contributing with the bat. The bowlers are doing well. We saw, a, let's say, a second string bowling attack for Australia in the second game. We saw Nesser coming in. We saw Jai Richardson coming in with Pat Cummins missing out. Hazelwood is a big miss for Australia already. Just Stark being the main spirit bowler, and then still we saw the Australian bowlers look more threatening in that second Test match than the English bowlers, and currently, like Australia seems to have everything up there for them. And we see in the next Test, as you mentioned in the MCG, Scott Boland at 32 is getting a debut.
yeah.
Cummins comes back, that certainly strengthens it. And Jai Richardson, who got a fifer in the second innings, is missing out. So Australia are in one of the best places in there they have ever been in Ashes, I feel.
Definitely. And if you see before coming to Ashes, Cummins and Hazelwood were the performing bowlers, be it in Test, be it in IPL, be it the T20 World Cup. And Stark had had such a bad T20 World Cup, no IPL for him. And he led the attack so beautifully in the second Test, in the absence of these two players. He may not have been the highest wicket taker, but whenever he came out to bowl, he got the crucial wickets of Malan, of Root, and that just helped. Certainly, Nesser getting his debut, Richardson getting a five in the last test. With Cummins getting fit, you knew Nesser is missing out, and Cummins is taking his place. But a bit surprised myself that Richardson's also being missed out. There's some concern on his soreness, etc. But Scott Boland, it's a home test for him, home test for Marcus Harris as well. So Melbourne is their home ground, and they've given a preference to Scott Boland on his freshness on his home ground. He's had an amazing home record, but as you said, debut Barry Green getting a 32, not a small blow. And this is after James Patterson has retired, who was their test bowler. So definitely a problem of plenty for Australia, which is a good problem, and especially when you have a bowling captain in the form of Cummins. So a good problem to have.
Certainly. And just one more question coming on to Pat Cummins itself. Australia have had some issues with the captaincy. We saw that, Tim Payne was supposed to play the game. Then we had some issues with him. Cummins played the first game. I think he captained beautifully. And then Steve Smith taking the reins in the second test match. I mean, it's like a complete circle with Smith coming in. It was really good to see him back as captain, but we all knew that it was going to come back to Cummins once he's come back.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about the captaincy situation in Australia? I mean, as a long term, do you think Cummins looks like the one that Australia will go ahead with?
I think they're slowly getting Smith back in that top circle. Right from first getting into the playing 11, he's become a vice captain. No huge objections as such. He's had his fair serve of time. He served his suspension. So I would say it's not a matter that he cannot be ever made the captain again because he admitted to his mistake. He served time for that. And it's time to move on. But that change cannot happen instantly, especially in Australian cricket when all captains in the recent past have been going through a lot of scrutiny, a lot of objections. So with Tim Payne controversy happening, it could not have been Smith right away. So it started with Cummins, who is the only face, and he was the vice captain before. So I think Cummins should be the captain in the near future. But Cummins is very happy with Smith being the vice captain, which is a
Yeah, so
pleasant
like
thing.
yeah, a good camaraderie between the two is really what Australia
Correct.
requires, I feel.
Definitely. Because Cummins is the top test bowler, Smith their outstanding middle order batsman, very much like Root is. And in this series, Labuschagne, Travis Head, who was the vice captain last match, all of them have just contributed extremely well. Even Cameron Green, if not with the bat, whenever he's come on to bowl. As a fifth bowler, I found him more threatening than Ben Stokes. And even when Butler's wicket was not happening in the second test, when Green came, there was sudden bounce, sudden movement, sudden edges, certain misses. So you always felt that Green, he may not be a very good bowler. He's still young. He's 22 years old. But every test, he's picking three, four odd wickets here and there. So I think Australia has a very balanced squad. One thing that needs to step up is Marcus Harris opening. It's his home ground. Hopefully, he can get some runs because you have Khwaja waiting. It's not that Australia doesn't have another opener. You have Khwaja waiting. And Cameron Green needs to score some runs with the bat. I think that's the only thing missing for them.
Certainly. So coming on to the Boxing Day test finally, and that's what is the most important thing. England need to get something out of this game. They can't. I mean, you lose this game, you lose the series, and then it's all about preparing for the next Ashes. I think for England. So for this for England, it's going to be a very big game at the MCG. It's a big ground. I mean, it's one of the best grounds in the world. Australia, the home support will be huge, and with the mindset that Australia is going into it, what do you see happening? The changes have been made by both the teams. England certainly look like the batting has been strengthened in some ways. And what do you see happening on Boxing Day tomorrow?
See, I would personally want the series to still remain alive after this test. If England doesn't win it, at least a draw. They need to fight for a draw. Test has not yet started. I'm sure they would be going for a win. And it's not just the Ashes. If you look at the larger picture, there's also the WTC points happening. So each and every test is important. And England did missed out on the finals in the first edition. They're not doing so well in this edition. So these three matches really count for them. I personally feel Root needs to get a century. Although he's been scoring in every innings, not getting dismissed for less than 30 odd runs. First innings he got on a duck. But still, a big daddy hundreds missing from Joe Root. And he scored 1,500 runs in this calendar year. Time, he will at least get one more innings to score another century. So, hoping for him to come good and England's bowlers to finally dominate. I think Mark Wood has some raw pace, some rapid pace to disturb all Australian batsmen. Smith has had a problem against fast short bowling stuff. So Warner has had a issue with short ball and with pulling. So let's see if Mark Wood can actually disturb their rhythm and lines. So England needs to bounce back. It's needed. And in the MCG, I feel Ollie Robinson will play a huge role.
Certainly, I think one more person that I want to really talk about has been Manas Labuschagne. With Australia having Warner coming good and Steve Smith coming good, I mean, we expect those people to score runs. But
Yep.
I think from last year, Labuschagne left the Ashes as number four test batter. And he's come into this Ashes as the number one test player in the world, test batsman in the world, and he has shown some class. I mean, he has been that mainstay of the Australian side. With Warner getting out or Smith getting out, that problem that England has with Root and Malan getting out, that doesn't stay because we have seen Labuschagne score quickly. He has the capability to do that. He stays out there. He kind of dominates the bowling in his own way. And he's been one of the best batsmen that Australia has had. And that to say when you have a Warner and Steve Smith in the side says a lot about Labuschagne. What are your thoughts about him?
I think he's been astounding. And to think of it, he came as a concussion substitute for Smith. And he just idolizes Smith so much. He makes his batting like him. He's very fidgety. He just wants to play like Smith, stay on the crease, play as many balls. That disappointment whenever both of them get out is very much visible. So I think he's played a huge role. Along with that, I'll also mention Travis Head. Scored a 150 odd, then scored a quick fire 50. I think both of them in the middle order are certainly strengthening Australia's cause. And actually, these 3-4 batters are scoring the bulk of the runs. So that limelight on other players, be it Cameron Green, be it on Marcus Harris, and with Australia winning, has not been so much. But I think Australia will surely be tested in MCG.
Certainly. Thank you, Vidya. Thank you for coming on show today. And we are hoping that England put a fight in the next game, and we have the Ashes remain open for the games for the two games after that. Thank you for coming on the show today. And for more such content, please keep watching Sports Taza. We'll be back with the coverage of the Ashes series. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you.